Sometimes the happiest day of a bride's life
Stay away from me!
is when the groom is dead. A Christian mom gives a helping hand for murder.
I want him dead.
She was offering $5,000 to $15,000.
I said I needed them.
A policeman's wife takes the law into her own hands.
Domestic violence frequently ends in death.
And a military bride does anything to escape divorce.
God help the next man who has a relationship with her.
These deadly women write their own wedding vows. They promise, from this day forward, to have and to kill. Memphis, Tennessee, 1985. Sundays are a day of worship for the Owens family. Morning and night, they go to church. 32-year-old Gail is in the choir.
She did appear to be the perfect mother. I mean, she sang in the church. She took care of 2 sons.
Her 37-year-old husband, Ron, is a respected member of the congregation.
Ron Owens was very active in church as well. He would stay after church on Sunday to coach basketball.
Their 2 sons love helping Dad.
Oh, that was beautiful, ladies. Congratulations. I'm just going to train and all right, the boys come.
Her and her husband had essentially the image of a perfect relationship.
Just make sure you're not late for dinner, right?
Gail looked like a devoted wife and mother. Took care of her family, involved with the church.
The Christian mom is often on missions in some of Memphis's poorest and toughest areas.
A suburban mother driving around some of the meanest streets of Memphis. She stuck out like a sore thumb.
It's predominantly black, and she's a white lady in a fancy car.
Gail is handing out cash to the poor.
She was offering thousands of dollars.
Here. Her nickname in the neighborhood became Big Money.
But her generosity is causing her family to go broke.
Bills started coming back unpaid.
Gail wasn't paying the bills, she was hiding them. Debts were piling up.
Finished for the day?
Yes, I am.
Well, you have a lovely evening.
Ron has no idea what his wife's up to. It's not the first time she's kept a secret. For a number of years, Gail embezzled money from her employers. And not just the petty cash.
She embezzled somewhere around $60,000.
Gail's excuse for this was saying that it would ease financial pressure on her husband. In fact, it made financial pressure exist where it hadn't been there before.
Ron only finds out about his wife's thieving ways
What's going on, Gail?
It'll be all right, Ron.
when Gail's arrested. She's convicted of 35 counts of forgery.
Not only did she have to pay back the money, she was fined. Now the family was under financial strain.
Ron mortgages the house and uses their savings to pay Gail's debt to society.
Mommy!
After serving 60 days in jail, Gail comes home to a frosty welcome.
I'm going out.
Come on now, and I'll tell you all about it.
Okay.
There are questions about how much friction the embezzlement case and other debts had on their relationship.
Publicly, Ron stands by his wife. Privately, the hospital nursing administrator is mortified by Gail's crimes.
That ended up being a serious problem for the couple. He was angry, he was ashamed.
Close the door.
But Ron has a shameful secret of his own.
Lock it.
Ron had been having an affair with a woman at work.
Despite Outward's appearance of being a very happy couple, there were secrets. Her husband had been having an affair, we're told, with somebody at work.
The affair isn't as secret as Ron thinks. Gail is on to them. She follows her husband to work.
Gail realized that her husband was having an affair and confronted him about it.
Proud of yourself?
She actually caught him with his mistress in a parking lot.
How dare you?
How dare you?
Furious at his betrayal, Gail won't turn the other cheek.
She went to confront him, and she's alleged that he slapped her.
You monster!
They actually may have been headed to divorce because of this and other issues.
Gail fears divorce will cost her more than a husband. She'll lose her meal ticket. And because she's a jailbird, custody of her 2 sons.
I would say things were about as bad as they could get in the Owens household, but I'd be wrong. They were about to get a lot worse. She became desperate.
On the surface, Ron and Gail Owens appear to have the perfect relationship. Living in the middle-class city of Bartlett, Memphis. Until tragedy. Ron is the victim of a brutal home invasion.
Robbery seemed like it was a plausible motive in that he didn't seem to have any enemies at the time. He was well-liked in the community and active, so there's no reason to think that anybody would have wanted him to be murdered.
The attack stuns the community. Violent crime is rare here.
When this murder happened, it was the second murder that they know of being recorded.
Nothing is stolen, and Ron has no known enemies. It's a baffling case. Until police get a call from the other side of town.
A few days later, when a man named George James came forward and said that Gail Owens had offered him money to kill her husband.
George tells them a crazy tale of a white woman armed with cash, trolling the mean streets of Memphis, looking for a hitman.
She drove around for months, in fact, approaching groups of young men.
Gail thinks the right cash can turn any stranger
I want him dead.
into a killer.
How much?
5,000.
I'm gonna need some money. I'm gonna need some money up front.
There were several men who ostensibly took her up on the offer, but essentially scammed her. She was offering thousands of dollars, and there were people who said sure, and then she never heard from them again.
She was a laughingstock. They took her money, though.
Gail is conned out of thousands of dollars, but she doesn't give up.
She ran out of money, but that didn't deter her. She was bound and determined to find someone to kill her husband, and eventually she did.
This is the house.
42-year-old Sydney Porterfield
And follow me in through
is willing to murder now and be paid later.
When do I get paid?
when his life insurance comes through.
How much?
He had quite a background in criminal history and assaults and other things.
Ron's death will make Gail a wealthy widow.
Gail Owens stood to gain $115,000 from Ron Owens' life insurance policy.
It's nice dribbling, Brian. Come on, Steve, take defense. Go, shoot, shoot, go. Oh, nice. Go, boys.
February 17th, 1985. Like every other Sunday, the Owens family go to church.
Mom, how do we do basketball practice with Dad?
No, not tonight.
Oh, please.
Why not?
But after the service, Gail changes their routine.
Come on, Gail.
The two boys always liked to watch Ron play basketball. And that particular night, she wouldn't let them watch and made them go with her to her sister's house.
Tonight, she wants Ron home alone to greet her paid guest.
So that night, Ron parked his car in his driveway, walked into the house, is attacked from behind by Sidney Porterfield.
Ron is ambushed with a tire iron.
There was probably 26 plus blows to the back of his head. It was hit so hard it appeared that you would have taken a small hand axe and hit somebody in the back of the head. That's how split open it was.
Incredibly, Ron clings to life.
Dad?
When Gail and her two sons return home later that night, she lets the 11-year-old lead the way.
She had her son go into the house. Of course, he found his dad in the floor, and that's when the police were called.
Ron actually lingered for a few hours before actually dying at the hospital.
I'm not sure which is worse, having her husband killed or allowing one of her children to find his father's body.
After months of planning, Gail is finally a wealthy widow. But her celebrations are short-lived.
I want him dead.
One of her would-be hitmen is telling all.
When he told us that she had tried to hire him, we had him call her, and he told her that she didn't give him some money. He was going to the Bartlett police.
George plays the lead in a sting.
Look, you don't need to know anything else.
When Gail gives him money for his silence, every word is caught on tape.
Why'd you kill your husband?
Look, we just had a bad 13 years, okay?
The game's up, and she knows it.
Well, she confessed to paying to have him murdered. There was no emotion during her statement, from what I understand.
This is none of your business.
Gail claims the day Ron slapped her sealed his fate.
You monster!
She said that that incident is what led her to take to the streets of Memphis and look for someone to kill her husband.
Gail gives up Sidney Porterfield. He's convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. In 1986, Gail Owens is convicted of accessory to first-degree murder. She, too, is sentenced to death.
Gail underestimated everyone.
How much?
5,000.
I think she really believed that anyone in the black community would be happy to take her money and kill and keep their mouth shut, and she was completely wrong.
After 26 years on death row, Gail's sentence is commuted to life. In 2011, she is granted parole. To the surprise of many, waiting outside the prison is her son.
At some point, Stephen decided that he couldn't hold on to this anger anymore and that he needed to forgive her. To this day, they're nearly inseparable.
I don't think society needs to be very nervous about Gail Owens living among them. Most people serving time in prison for murder had one specific person they wanted to kill, and they did it for what they believed was one important reason. Gail falls into that category.
Who is she? I want to know who she is.
And there's nobody.
Yes, there is. Now you tell me who she is.
Every home has secrets.
People around them started seeing these cracks.
$500 on clothes.
Some about everyday life.
They argued a lot about Kim's spending.
Others are unthinkable.
Stay away from me.
I wished he'd left and taken the kids at that point.
Calexico takes its name from its location, the border of California and Mexico.
It's a rural area, extremely impoverished. The population is predominantly Hispanic.
In 2006, new residents come to town, the Cano family. 37-year-old Kim convinces her husband Frank to leave Los Angeles for the desert life. They move to the upscale side of town.
They purchased a 5-bedroom home in a brand new subdivision.
The couple is raising 4 children. They're 3, and Kim's teenage daughter from her first marriage.
Pass. Frank basically was just best husband. He would just go to work, come home, dedicated his time to his kids and his wife.
But people around them started seeing these cracks.
I've got chores for you.
Yes, boss.
Everybody had to do what she said, and they better hop to it.
Frank lets her run the house. But one thing he won't give up is the job he loves as a California Highway Patrol officer, even though that means a 400-mile round trip to and from work.
Kim insisted that they move 3 hours away from where Frank worked. I don't know what she was thinking.
It's a sacrifice Frank makes to keep Kim happy.
It made it really rough on Frank. Now he had to work a night shift and swing shift, and it really messed up his sleeping habits.
Frank gave her everything within his power to give. A home, beautiful children, amenities, love, affection.
Is that perfume?
Kim, don't start.
But Kim suspects his true affection lies elsewhere.
She suspected Francisco was possibly having an extramarital affair in Los Angeles.
Frank denies cheating, but admits he has a close female friend at work.
She accused Frank of having an affair. He said, no, she's just a friend. And that Frank was a very friendly guy. But from that point on, Kim was very suspicious about him.
There is another problem in the home: Kim's spending.
What's this? $500 on clothes, $200 on a purse.
I needed them.
Frank had a pretty good salary insofar as being a trooper. It was never enough for Kim. But I think if Frank had made $1 million a minute, it wouldn't have been enough for Kim.
This has got to stop.
During the course of those arguments, their children actually saw her physically lash out against him.
Frank keeps the abuse a secret.
I wanted to confide in you.
Kim doesn't.
Frank's been beating her. Not Frank.
Kim said that Frank was verbally and physically abusing her.
Kim, what's wrong?
Stay away from me!
Everyone that knew Frank described him as a great guy. Kim described him as an alcoholic and abusive. I think Kim saw every man that way.
Calexico, Southern California.
I've just driven over 200 miles.
Highway Patrol Officer Frank Kano is always exhausted from long shifts, miles of travel, and arguments at home. Now his wife Kim is out to smear him.
I need you to come over.
She calls his work supervisor.
Frank was painting the bedroom. She said he was doing a sloppy job. She said, you know, Frank's been drinking, he's been yelling at me, he's made a mess here.
I don't know what Kim was thinking, because if a law enforcement officer is convicted of domestic abuse, they cannot carry a gun. If they cannot carry a gun, they cannot be a law enforcement officer. I don't know what Kim thought was going to happen to that paycheck.
See? He's a mess.
Hey, buddy.
You here to help?
When Kim left, the supervisor said, Frank, maybe you better get marriage counseling.
They never get a chance to visit a counselor.
Oh, please hurry! I didn't know the cup was open. I didn't know.
Just days later, on December 4th, 2006.
He's gone.
No!
Frank is dead, the victim of a terrible accident.
No!
Kim says it should be her lying dead. She was about to end her own life when Frank tried to stop her.
Now, Kim says she's so fed up, she's had it. She's gonna get that gun and commit suicide. Frank comes into the room.
Stay away from me!
Kim says she's frightened. She says he's angry. She aims the gun up at the ceiling, she says, closes her eyes and takes a shot. It hits Frank in the eye and kills him.
Detective Julio Diaz starts investigating Kim's story and finds the couple has been constantly fighting, or at least one of them has.
Kim could fly off the handle at times. She had kind of a short fuse.
Stay away from me!
At family get-togethers, Kim would launch into uncontrollable attacks against Francisco.
Stay away from me!
She threatened to stab him with a kitchen knife in the middle of an argument in front of their older daughter.
I want to know who she is.
There's nobody.
Yes, there is. Now you tell me who she is.
Their children tell a tale of spousal abuse by Kim.
Well, why don't I just shoot you then?
Well, go ahead and do it. See what happens.
She remembers Kim telling Frank, well, how about if I just shoot you? And he said, well, go ahead and do it and see what happens.
Mom, Dad.
Detective Diaz starts to realize the Kanos' lives aren't exactly how Kim portrays them. And then there's her story of the shooting.
Stay away from me!
She was just trying to scare him, so she shot him in the air.
Forensic ballistics reveal the shot that kills Frank is carefully aimed at one place.
Her gun was at basically her face level. And I mean, it was pointing right at his face. There's no way that it was pointing at the ceiling because it wouldn't have hit his face.
Kim Kano goes to trial for murder, and prosecutors make their case. The day Frank is killed, he's writing a love letter to his wife.
Frank! Frank!
She called out to him.
I need you up here.
He abruptly got up from the kitchen table and went upstairs to see what the problem was.
The problem is an angry wife with a loaded gun.
What's wrong?
Frank must have been astonished to see his own gun pointed at him like that. It must have been just horrifying.
Kim claims the gun goes off by accident.
She said it felt like a piece of paper when she pulled the trigger. But a ballistics expert testified that it actually took 12 pounds of force to pull the trigger.
Did your father yell at your mom?
Adding to the weight of evidence, her children testify against her.
Did you see anyone get hit?
Yes, sir. Mom hit Dad.
They'd lost their father. They knew if they testified against their mother and she was found guilty, she'd be going to prison. They'd be losing her, too.
Yes, sir. Mom hit Dad.
They must have believed she belonged in prison. They also might have been very afraid of her. If she can kill Dad, she can kill me.
In 2010, Kim Kano is found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 40 years to life.
Kim never confessed she had to be in the right. She could not admit that she'd done wrong.
Everyone loved Frank Kano, except his wife. But why did she kill him?
Greed. She was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy that paid the balance of their debt in the event of his accidental death. And frustration, because he wasn't able to provide her with the lifestyle that she felt he should be able to provide her with.
Kim's narcissistic ways steal a good father from his children.
Frankie said, you know, I would never be able to see another football game with my father again. That really bothered me. That really hurt.
I think Frank felt that being a cop was enough to keep her from seriously hurting him. Sadly, he was wrong.
In the silence of darkness,
Around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, Taishi got up.
a young woman's life changes forever.
She was in the bathroom.
She didn't see or hear anybody. She just heard a gunshot.
A tragic mystery to a life that started with such promise.
It's just abhorrent.
Fort Hood, Texas, one of the biggest military bases in the U.S. Its support town, Killeen, teams with young soldiers from all over the country, including 20-year-old Gary Prokop.
Gary was born in Germany and grew up in San Diego, California. He joined the military after he finished high school, and he had never been to Killeen, Texas until he was stationed there at Fort Hood.
Here in 1996, opposites attract. carefree local party girl, 17-year-old Taishi Grant, catches the soldier's eye.
Honey.
You want to marry him?
She didn't really have a whole lot of ambition, but Taishi was a lot of fun to be around.
Gary came from a good family, graduated high school, and he didn't do drugs. The exact opposite of Taishi and her friends.
What's your name?
Tashi.
But Gary can't resist Taishi's charms.
Gary was new in the area. He didn't know anyone. He was probably a bit lonely being away from his family.
Romance blossoms, and in a whirlwind, there are wedding bells.
It's not unusual in Killeen to go ahead and make it official and be married, and then they can get the benefits from the military.
You know what I like waking up to?
I'm surprised now.
Military accommodation, medical insurance, a comfortable life. By marrying Gary, Taishi's fortunes instantly change.
She must have seen Gary as someone who could give her something that she didn't have.
And nothing cements a new marriage like a baby.
What's it me?
You're gonna be daddy.
At first, the relationship seemed to be going well. Gary might have thought there were no problems initially, but it was a little different for Taishi.
Taishi hasn't really thought this through. Life as a stay-at-home military mom
Taishi?
is not Taishi's idea of a good time.
How can you live like this?
You don't like it? You get it.
She's just the kind of person that didn't care to be a responsible mom. Old food, laying around, dirty carpet, clothes everywhere. It's just the kind of house that most people would not want to live in.
And you're going out?
Oh, and she needs a diaper changed.
To Taishi, Gary looked good. He offered a life she wanted, but not really.
She wanted to do what she wanted to do. Taishi liked to party.
She didn't really want to leave her friends and her druggy lifestyle behind.
Taishi leaves Gary holding the baby, while she plays around with an old high school sweetheart, 18-year-old Jacob Harris.
That was what she really wanted.
She was more committed to hanging out with her gang friends and her drug friends. Jacob Harris was one of them, her boyfriend. And that's what led to the animosity between her and Gary.
Just a year into the marriage, Gary has had enough.
Want to be a college boy?
Taishi and her husband decided to divorce.
Gary plans to move back home to California.
Maybe it's best if you don't come back.
Damn right.
I think to Taishi, Gary represented a meal ticket. There's really no indication she ever even loved him.
Gary's not only leaving Taishi, he's leaving the Army and losing all the benefits of being a soldier.
You divorce him, you won't get nothing.
When he left the Army, his health benefits would end. In addition to that, he would no longer have the $200,000 life insurance policy. And Taishi decided, well, it's time to get something from him before he goes.
I'd be better off an army widow, wouldn't I?
When Taishi figured this all out, I think she set a date for his murder.
Killeen, Texas, 1998. 18 months after their wedding, 22-year-old husband Gary and his 19-year-old wife, Taishi Prokop, plan their divorce.
So she can stay with me at Easter?
Yep, if I have her for Christmas.
Yeah, sounds fair.
And the future of their baby daughter.
They had sat down and written a custody agreement, and it appeared that Gary had every intention of being a good father. He wanted custody on certain holidays, and this agreement laid out exactly when he would get her and when Taishi would get her, what financial arrangements they would have, and what Gary would pay for.
There's only one arrangement Taishi doesn't like.
Gary was planning on leaving the service. That would have meant an end to his regular Army paycheck, as well as that $200,000 life insurance policy.
She isn't interested in being a divorcee. Taishi wants to be a widow.
She wanted that money. She saw that as an opportunity for her to do other things.
All right, so coming through here, this is the lounge room.
With her lover, 20-year-old Jacob Harris, and 2 willing friends, Taishi plans Gary's demise.
What shocks me is how easy it was for her boyfriend Jacob to find people to help him do it. It's just abhorrent.
20-year-old Charles Chucky Turnbull will be the gunman. 19-year-old Rodney Barfield, the getaway driver.
And I'll be out of town.
Jacob gives himself the perfect alibi.
He left and went to Missouri. You know, how can I be involved in the crime? I'm in Missouri, I'm out of state.
In the early hours of June 25th, 1998, Taishi seals Gary's fate.
Around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, Taishi got up, went to the front door and unlocked it. Chucky came into the house.
Taishi retreats to the bathroom, leaving her sleeping husband an easy target.
Chucky fired an assault rifle 1 time right into Gary's head and ended his life just like that.
The murder of Gary Prokop was mercifully quick and painless. He was shot in the head while he was sleeping and never knew what happened.
To complete the plan, Taishi needs to play a shocked bystander.
The story that she relayed was that she was in the bathroom. She didn't see or hear anybody. She just heard a gunshot. She was scared and she fled the house.
Help! Help!
She just ran straight to her neighbors and called 911.
Send the police! Someone shot my husband!
But Taishi is a bad actor.
Someone shot my husband! Send help!
She was a suspect right away.
Someone shot my husband! Send help!
It sounded in the 911 call as though she was trying to force herself to cry or to sound like she was crying, but officers on the scene said that she wasn't crying at all, that they never saw tears.
There's another red flag for investigators.
She forgot to bring her baby with her. What kind of mother would leave their baby in danger? Taishi did, because she knew her baby was not in danger.
But despite their suspicions, the police lack direct evidence, and for 3 years, Taishi gets away with murder.
Everybody thought that her story probably was not legitimate, but they had nothing to go on.
Then Sergeant Patrick Turk gets a break in the case, thanks to a police informant.
One of my sources came to me at one point and said that he had information about this Prokop murder that had occurred in 1998, and he wanted to talk to me about it.
The informant leads police to the getaway driver, Rodney Barfield.
It was Tashi's idea. Chucky was the shooter.
Filled with remorse, he cracks.
I was the driver.
Over the course of about 5 hours, he confessed his full involvement in the crime. He cried as he confessed.
You got the gun?
Yeah.
He detailed all the roles of all the individual players in the crime.
The more co-conspirators you have in any plan, eventually someone's gonna crack.
Their house of cards collapses. Facing the death penalty, Taishi accepts a plea.
The evidence was pretty compelling, but she never admitted her involvement in the crime, other than to accept a guilty plea.
All the co-defendants are convicted. Charles Turnbull of capital murder. Jacob Harris and Rodney Barfield of conspiracy to commit capital murder.
He obviously had remorse about the crime, and yet he got sucked up into helping out with it, and he's going to be spending most of his life in prison.
In 2003, Taishi Prokop pleads guilty to capital murder and is sentenced to life in prison. She is eligible for parole in 2032.
Taishi is exactly where she belongs, and I hope she stays there for the rest of her life.
A young man's bright future is cut short.
Just the senseless death of a soldier, unrelated to combat. He was a good dad. He was a good soldier. He was loved by his family.
What's your name?
Because he married the wrong woman.
Taishi had little education and no career at the time she killed her husband. But a lot of women fall into that category, and they don't get featured on Deadly Women.
These deadly women betrayed the most intimate trust. Gail Owens contracted out her husband's murder. Kim Kano took the law into her own hands. And Taishi Prokop's greed cost a young soldier his life. All three women killed those they vowed to love. For these brides, wedded bliss was to have and to kill.
Stole money again. She didn't learn her lesson, and she didn't learn how to not get caught.
But time in jail doesn't teach Gail a lesson.
Her parents had to come to the rescue, and they mortgaged their own home.
A key prosecution witness at Gail's trial is her own son.
And you can just imagine what this poor boy was going through, not only having to go through the trauma of having discovered the body of his own father in that state, but also then having to testify against his own mother.
Kim, she was constantly running Frank down. He wasn't good enough, he wasn't smart enough, she was just angry at him, it seemed like all the time. And even though Frank was this big burly guy, he was really kind of a big teddy bear. Kim ruled the roost.
Kim dulls her pain with a cocktail of sedatives.
Kim was known to be on 5 different painkillers. This definitely could have affected her thinking process.
Frank's worried by the number of pills Kim takes every day.
Don't you tell me what to do.
One of the prescriptions Kim was on is called SOBA, and it's meant to be a long-term drug for people that are addicted to painkillers. Domestic violence starts out small, yelling, maybe a little shove. Then it progresses to all-out physical slapping, fist punching, all kinds of things, and frequently ends in death. People don't hear too much about wife on husband domestic abuse, but it certainly does happen. It's rarely reported because oftentimes the husband is embarrassed. Sometimes husbands will take enormous abuse and never leave.
Desperate to be believed, Kim offers yet another version of events.
She said that they woke up, everything was fine that morning, and that Frank was sitting down in the kitchen area somewhere doing something on his computer, and that he gave her a look. Well, they asked her, what did that look mean to you? I felt that he was gonna attack me. So she said that soon after that, she went through her cabinet to look for either medication or something, and then she went upstairs.
Frank! I need you up here.
There is no doubt in my mind that Kim intended on killing Frank that horrible day with his own gun. The first violence was verbal.
I said I needed them.
The second time she was violent was threatening him with a steak knife.
Stay away from me!
The third time, she threatened to shoot him with his own gun.
Well, why don't I just shoot you then?
I wished he'd left and taken the kids at that point. And the fourth time, she used the gun and killed him. That's premeditation.
For Calexico prosecutor Marco Nunez, the case says a lot about human nature.
In this one of the main takeaways for me was that you can offer plenty, you can offer your all to another person, but sometimes, for some people, it's just never enough. Some people literally believe that the grass is always greener on the other side. Beware of those people.
Kim testified at her trial that she was a vegetarian, a Christian, loved to read Jane Austen novels, and wanted to get a college education. That was pretty much the opposite of what Kim was. She had awakened at 4 in the morning and went into the bathroom. At that very moment, her husband is shot in bed, a bed that she had just been in. They found that a little suspicious. How convenient that she had to go to the bathroom then.